Now we delve deeper into the East African region in terms of what's making news in and around this particular region of our continent, and we get analysis and comments from our East Africa analyst Dennis Beru, who is a journalist and team lead at Grassroots Journalism. Dennis, good morning to you on this Tuesday, the 25th of November. The year has gone by; it's done.
We are almost, winding up 2025. Hope you are well in South Africa.
Well, thanks, and we hope you are as well in Nairobi.
Yeah, sure.
So, today let's start with Ethiopia. The country has taken a step towards building one of the region's largest railway training centers. Let's talk about that in terms of why Ethiopia is best suited for this kind of project, and what will this mean for railway and infrastructure development in the country?
Asanda, of course, the Bishoftu-based facility sprawling across 62 is envisioned as the backbone of Ethiopia's long-term strategy to build a fully localized, technically skilled workforce capable of operating and, of course, maintaining and expanding one of the continent's the most ambitious rail networks. Of course, according to the Ethiopia Railway communique, of course, they said the center will be completed within 3 years. Lina Balecheu, now the Chief Executive Officer of the ERC, described the project as a pivotal investment in the country's human capital. Of course, he also noted that Ethiopia has reached an inflection point where expanding the railway infrastructure must be matched by a comparable growth in domestic technical capability, and of course, our emphasis on reducing reliance on foreign technicians align with the broader national policy. And to the Ministry of Transport and Logistics, Alemu and will provide efficient transportation services and modern railway infrastructure to connect the country's major development center and all neighboring countries. And Ethiopia, of course, they heavily depend on overseas experts as long-term inflated operational cost has slowed the pace for the localization. And of course, as under the facility is expected to significantly cut training-related expenses, of course, stimulate.
And as you say, this is in efforts to make the workforce more localized. And I guess that also reduces the dependence then on international or outside technicians in terms of this particular railway project. What will it mean then for local employment, though? Can it directly translate into that rising for the country of Ethiopia?
Yeah, of course, they are looking at a project employing the Ethiopians, and of course, it is said that around 1,840 Ethiopians have already been trained and certified maintenance and safety management, and of course, that means that over 2,840 Ethiopians have been employed, and of course creating some job. Of course, by early 2024, the surpassed 3,000 roles such as trade, electrical engineers, of course the mid to junior level managers. And of course, you can see this is something that, of course, it is to create employment opportunities for the Ethiopians.
So let's move to Uganda now. Uganda and Kenya, the presidents there, President Museveni and his Kenyan counterpart, William Ruto, they've met in Toronto to discuss trade between the two countries. This also has to do with rail infrastructure. What do we know here?
Yeah, ago, President William Ruto and Ugandan counterpart Yoweri Museveni, of course, they met at a Devki company, and of course, they spoke about the construction of the standard gauge railway extension from Naivasha to Kampala and onwards to Rwanda and to the border of the Democratic of Congo. And of course, speaking in Osikuru, on Uganda on Sunday during the groundbreaking of the Devki Mega steel project, President Museveni, President Ruto said that the extension of SGR will be a major joint venture between Kenya and Uganda, with of course, the formal launch set for January 2026. And of course, this is just an extension of the Kenya, the Naivasha to Kampala railway, which will now connect with the Malaba Kampala line and later to the DRC. And of course, Ruto said that will also jointly extend the petroleum pipeline to Rwanda and DR Congo as part of the efforts to economic cause as of the government of Kenya is devastating, divesting around 60% of its shareholding in Kenya Pipeline, and of course through the Nairobi Securities Exchange. President, of course, encouraged the public and the private investors across East Africa to take up the shares. Of course, he also added that Uganda recently ratified a new cooperation of course, during the joint ministerial meeting in Nairobi for the joint ownership of the pipeline infrastructure. And of course, Ruto also noted that the regional projects such as the petroleum SGR and the dueling of the Rironi Nakuru to Malaba are designed to enhance connectivity between the coast and, of course, the ongoing Kenya to Uganda infrastructure. And of course, people see these as an opportunity for the East African nation to connect to its the coastline of East Africa.
All right. Also in Canada, this time in Ottawa, the capital, there was a meeting there of civic groups, and they were meeting around the crisis in Sudan. What emerged as major points?
Yeah, of course, these are civil group which hold, the news conference, and of course, the representative from the number of civic and community groups hold a conference in Ottawa, in Canada, of course, to discuss the humanitarian crisis in Sudan. And speaking to the reporters, um, now Ahmad El Khad, the National Council of the Canadian Muslim, Ismail Adam, Darfur Association of Canada, and of course, we had Momona San, the Sudanese Canadian Community Association. Of course, their conversation was centralized at, of course, the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Sudan, where, of course, now women and children now feeling the brunt of the ongoing crisis between the national forces and, of course, the national the RSF. And of course, in the news conference, they really focused on the, of course, coming in and ensuring that, of course, because they protect, the women and girls, and we've seen so many children, women being killed in the ongoing war.
Dennis, you faded a bit there. Are you there? Can you hear us?
Dennis, you faded a bit there. Are you there? Can you? Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you now. That's better. Please continue.
Yeah. Also, the peace negotiation, there is an end to the what is what they termed as the genocide that is still happening in Darfur and the entire Sudan, and of course the key players in the war. Of course, the UAE was mentioned in the conference, and there is need for the players, the likes of the Canadian, to come in and to ensure that, of course, there is an end to the war in Sudan.
Staying with Sudan, the Sudanese Armed Forces head or Sudan Army Chief has rejected another siege plan that's been put forward by the Quad, saying that the United Arab Emirates' involvement with the Quad is biased. On what grounds does he say this?
The armed forces rejected the ceasefire, a plan presented Arab Emirates involvement in the Quad is biased, and the proposed aims to eliminate the army. Of course, the accusation of arming and funding the RSF. And in March, I remember Asanda, it slammed the Sudanese move to file a case against it in the International Court Justice, calling it the charges as a cynical publicity stand. Of course, Abdel Fattah el-Burhan told the senior officials in an address released by his office late on Sunday that the proposal put forward this month by the Quad, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and UAE, and the US effectively eliminate the existence of the armed forces and, of course, the dissolution of all security agencies, while it maintain as the rebellious militia in its position. Of course, and in a response on Monday, Asanda, the UAE Minister of the State for the International Cooperation, Rahim bin Ibrahim al-Shami, accused al-Bahan of consistently obstructive behavior. And one more move, the General Bahan refuses peace over tours. And of course, his rejection of the U.S. Sudan, as a refusal to accept a ceasefire. And of course, he demonstrates constant obstructive behavior. This is according to El Hashimi. And of course, El Fatah sees as leaning on the other side, that is the RSF side, and of course, there are obvious a point to view this as that. Of course, he is not willing to have a conversation on ending the war in Sudan.
Right, so Dennis, we're going to leave it there for today. Thanks again for joining us and giving us your insights.
Thank you so much, Asanda.
Dennis Beru.